Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Old Man Aben, and the purpose of my channel is to help high schoolers and young adults navigate the complicated world that they live in by offering a different perspective. The perspective of looking back at the same choices that I made when I was your age and what I learned in the process of my successes and my failures. Today I'm going to be talking about how to find the right person to date and hopefully eventually transition into your life partner. What kind of person are you looking for in a relationship? Are you looking for someone that you can trust? Are you looking for someone that you can depend on? Someone who follows through with their promises, even if things get difficult? What kind of plan do you have to find them? How will you recognize them when you meet them? Well, let's talk about that. To start, this premise, you're not going to like it, but it's the truth. Dating is a scam. Dating is the world's biggest lie. Everyone on a date is on their best behavior. You're on your best behavior. You're wearing your nicest clothes. You're acting the best that you possibly can, and so are they. Everyone's lying. Now, if you get to know someone by dating them, you probably don't know who they are at all. All you get to know is what they choose to show you. You get to know them on a date. You're seeing the facade that they put up when they're trying to impress someone. What you need to do is get to know them as a friend first. Because your friends, they're not trying to impress you. They're just being themselves, right? How do your friends treat servers in a restaurant? Are they rude? Do they talk down to them? Or are they kind and leave a nice tip? How do they react in stressful situations? Do they lose their temper? Do they break things? Or are they stable and even-keeled? Do they lie? Do they cheat? Do they talk about their other friends behind their back? Because I'll tell you what, if they talk about other friends when they're not there, they're talking about you when you're not there. Can you depend on them? If you have a friend that has earned your respect and makes you a better person when you're around them, then that's the kind of person that you want to date. Because once you start dating, you will only see what that person chooses to show you. Let me tell you about my wives. And yes, I have 2 wives because I was your age and I did the same thing that 99% of you do when looking for a relationship. I met my first wife when I was moving into my very first apartment after high school. I moved to the city to go to community college. I found an apartment, and when I was moving in, there was a beautiful blonde girl moving in upstairs. She was going to the same school as me, lived in the same building, and she caught my eye. Now, she had a boyfriend back home, I found out later. But I knew that I had the advantage because I was with her 5 days a week, every week, sometimes 7 days a week. And he got to see her once in a while, so I knew that I had the advantage. And it didn't take long before we were dating, and before you know it, we were hot and heavy. And that guy was an afterthought. We became a couple. We eventually moved in together. We got married. We had a baby. And life was awesome. I was happy. I thought, this is great. I got a beautiful girl I'm dating way over my head. I had game back then. And not long after our 10th wedding anniversary, she had an affair with my best friend. and ran off with him. If I can steal her from somebody else, why should I be surprised that someone else stole her from me? She married my best friend. And after a couple of years, she cheated on him with her boss. And now, today, is married to him. I think back about all the times in our relationship that I should have walked away from that relationship. But I was afraid to. I was in love with her. I thought I could change her. I thought that our relationship would be enough to hold us together. But in the end, it all came back to roost, as my grandmother would say. The girl that I stole was stolen from me. And I had nobody to blame but myself. Now, my second wife, we've been married for 35 years. We have a fantastic life. She's the love of my life. I often thought I wish I would have married her first. But then I have a daughter that I love very much. And thought of a world without her in it is more than I can bear. And so I'm grateful for the way things turned out in the end. But I learned some very, very valuable lessons about choosing who you are going to invest your time and your future in. I met my second wife while I was still married to my first wife, because she was our babysitter. Now, before you freak out and start writing comments, I get how it sounds. But she was only 4 years younger than me. I was married at a very young age, and I was going to a church. My wife and I were both going to a church, taking our daughter, and when we were at church, we met a young girl who was, like I said, 4 years younger than me. And we had heard through the grapevine at church that she was a fantastic babysitter, and we were looking to get a babysitter. And so I talked to her at church and asked her if she'd be interested in coming to babysit for us. And she said, yeah, she would. So we set up a time, I believe it was a Saturday, the following Saturday. And she was going to come and babysit, and my wife and I were going to go out and have an evening. So we came home from our evening out, and of course the babysitter was there, and she was, everything looked great in the house, and we paid her, and she thanked us, and she got in her car and drove off. So we start walking around the house and looking at, it's one of those things. You just walk around the house and just kind of observe what it looks like. We had a sink full of dishes when we left, and they were all washed and dried and put away. We noticed that the kitchen floor had been swept, and the bookshelves, it looked like they'd been straightened. Didn't know what that meant exactly. Didn't really give too much more thought about it until the next day when our daughter woke up and we were talking about how the babysitter had been the night before. And she said, oh, she was the best babysitter I've ever had. We didn't even turn the TV on a single time. She read to me all night. So she read books to my daughter. She washed our dirty dishes, swept our kitchen floor, never asked for anything extra, just did it, and went home without any expectations of thanks or reward. And that impressed me. And she became our ride or die babysitter. I mean, if we wanted to go out someplace or had something to do, she was the one we called because she was amazing. Matter of fact, she was such a fine young woman. She was respectful and kind and patient, hardworking. I said to my wife, I said, we got to set her up with some of our friends. I mean, this is the kind of woman that they should be dating. And so we did. We set her up with several of our friends. They would go out on a couple dates, but it just never clicked. And so despite our best efforts, we could not get her hooked up with any of our friends. And it's just the way it went. But suddenly, after 10 years of marriage, I was alone. I lost my wife and my best friend on the same day. Shortly after my divorce was finalized, I got a letter in the mail. And it contained tickets that my then wife and I had pre-ordered for a famous ballet company that was coming through town performing Cinderella. I'd never been to a ballet, and she hadn't either, and we had thought at the time, hey, it might be fun. If we're going to go to a ballet, at least it's a story we know and we'll understand. So we bought these tickets about a year and a half out for when they were coming, because everybody knew that they'd be sold out way before the actual show. So the only way to get in was to buy them in advance. Well, these tickets came in the mail. I'm sitting there on the living room couch with these tickets in my hand, thinking I should just throw them away. Unless maybe I can give them to somebody, but I don't know who'd want to go to a Cinderella ballet. I don't know. But then I thought about the babysitter. How I tried to set her up with all my friends because she'd been such an impressive woman. But as far as I know, she wasn't dating anybody still. So the following Sunday, went to church, and there she was. I went up to her and I told her about the tickets and asked her if she'd be interested in going on a date with me. And she accepted. And so Saturday night, I go to pick her up for our date. Now, there's a total difference here between these two women. My first wife was flashy and makeup and red lipstick and dressed to the nines, and everybody looked when she walked in the room, and she loved it. That was my first wife. This girl was the absolute complete opposite. She wore makeup, I think, a little, but you couldn't really tell. She was beautiful without it. She wore simple clothes, jeans. She liked to be in the background, not really be noticed. She didn't like being out front. Didn't like people paying attention to her. She was the kind of person that would straighten up a room if she was sitting there alone just because it looked nicer straightened up. I took her out that night. We went to the ballet, took her out for dinner. And this sounds crazy. I know. It's crazy to me too. But after what I had just gone through with my first marriage, I said to my date, I said, I just want you to know that I like you a lot. And I told her the story about how I had tried to set her up with all my friends, and she had never, it just never worked. I said, I would like us to possibly see where this goes if you're interested. But I want you to know that I'm not dating just for the sake of dating. If I date someone, it's going to be exclusive, and it's going to be hoping that it becomes something more in the future. And she said, well, that's exactly what I want too. And so that very first night on our first date, I didn't kiss her, but I told her my intentions because I sensed that that was important to her, and it was. And we did become a couple, and we did get engaged, and we did get married, and now we've been married for 35 years. And I learned everything that I needed to know about her before I ever started dating her. I knew exactly the kind of person she was. I didn't have to guess. I didn't have to wonder. And I didn't have to sort through a bunch of lies and deception to try to figure out who this person was. I knew exactly who she was. And she impressed me right from the start. Well, that's it for today. Hit the like button if you liked this video, if it was helpful, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me in the future. And leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. I'd like to hear your comments about what we talked about today. And if you have a question or something in your life that's going on that you'd like me to talk about, I'd love to hear from you. Have a great day, my friends. I'll see you on the next one.